Episode of After Hours with Mia. Today we have again Chronically Fit with Chiara and her husband Matt. So, just again, Chiara has created an online community for people who struggle with chronic illness. It's kind of like a support group, but also you do those workout videos for people who, might need to, I don't know what the word would be, but like change the way they work out. Maybe they're stuck in bed or would prefer to stay in a chair. But I think that's really awesome. It's great for people who obviously can't exercise normally, but it's even good for lazy people. Like I probably have done a couple of your videos too. And she's also a school teacher, which I think is awesome. And Matt, you have some type of like adult job that I don't even understand what it is.
Yeah, it's about accurate. I don't even know what it is myself.
Yeah. It's like those people like you hang out with them and you're like, "Oh, what do you do?" And they say something you've never heard and you're like, "Oh, interesting." And then never ask another question.
I usually lie and make up the story myself. Like,
Then what would you like to be today? Are you an astronaut?
I would say I'm a deep sea whale rescuer
Interesting. That's very
or
dangerous.
dimensional. So whales in the past and the future and the
Oh,
present.
wow.
Some
Awesome.
say I've transcended.
So, I'm gonna ask a question that I've kind of grown to hate, but how are you doing today, Kiara?
Bit of a rough one today. Not feeling the best, but I think that's been December in general. But still doing all right. Up and out of bed.
Yeah, like I said, I've started to hate when people ask me like, "How am I doing? How Chris is doing?" Because nobody actually wants to hear like, "Oh, it's not going good."
Right.
It's like people either don't care, they just want you to say, "Good, how are you?"
Mhm.
But it just sucks, like, because you have like symptoms, you have appointments, you have like so much going on. But how are you doing, Matt?
Pretty good, I guess. I don't know. Minor headache.
Aw.
I know.
So last time we talked, I think it was Chris had just got his diagnosis, I think, with cancer, and we were starting to kind of deal with all that stuff. So since then, he's completed 3 8-hour sessions for chemo, and we did radiation Monday to Friday for 7 weeks.
Mhm.
But all of that has been completed, and we're really happy about it. But it hasn't really like ended, right? Like there's still like this whole healing process. Part of me almost misses going to the radiation office though, because I started to get to know people in the waiting room, and we all kind of had this camaraderie of like we all don't want to be here, but we're all stuck here together. Do you ever have that? Like, do you have any office you frequent that kind of like know the people?
Actually, yeah, you do really get to know some of the offices. It's like the one functional practitioner that I was working with and then still am. When I graduated college, they were like all so excited and they like called me on the phone to congratulate me and they sent me a gift and a card with everyone from their office. So it felt like it is really nice that you get to know people.
Aw, I love that. That's so cute. Yeah, it was funny
Yeah.
on the last day of radiation when I left the office because there was like, it's generally old people, like really old people, obviously. So I was like, all right, gentlemen, hopefully you'll never see me here again. And they're all like, good luck, good luck. Like it's sad, but I think since we're all in the same boat, it's kind of like you understand each other without really needing to talk about it, I guess.
Yeah, I think that is one where you're there every day. So you do it form like an informal support group like that. And I think it does help to have that little community getting you through it. 'Cause it is a long time to spend.
Yeah. And I think so with your illnesses like that you go through, um do you feel like there's like is there a set treatment that you have or is it kind of just like trying new medications, trying new things?
Yeah, it's a whole lot of trial, error, guesswork, balancing the different places because there is no clear path and there's diagnoses, but not like a real clear, this is everything. We don't need to keep exploring at
Do
this
you
point.
find that you both get people that like give you all these suggestions of things to try like all the time?
Oh god. All the time. Pretty much anyone you talk to has somebody who has been through something, and so they feel like they have a lot they can tell you, and what worked for their aunt, and what worked for their neighbor, and I mean, my goodness, I remember our male person was like telling us all these different supplements to take because like their mother went through it, and I appreciate it, but it is very overwhelming and it's hard to know exactly what to say to them to be like politely thanks, but no.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. And it's like they're coming from a good place. But it's like, don't you think you would have already looked into these things already? Especially like at least for us, because obviously chemotherapy and radiation, it's horrible for you. I mean, like even the cancer doctors tell you, like, hey, if the cancer doesn't kill you, this very well could. But I just hate how people are like, oh my God, don't let him do chemo. Don't let him. It's like, okay, so you want me to just like watch him die on the couch? Like, I don't understand. I literally, you guys, I had somebody tell me that instead of doing chemo, that he should just smoke weed every day and that that would get rid of his cancer.
It is so frustrating how, especially, I do tend to take a more holistic approach to my own treatment. There is a time and place for conventional medicine. And when it is a situation of life or death, you do what you have to do.
Yeah. Yeah, because you don't, I mean, there is like a time limit, sort of. You know what I mean? Like you only have so much time to correct something, especially when it is something like, stage 4 throat cancer. Like I would rather, instead of taking my chances, praying for him or giving him supplements, like doing something stronger. So yeah, I agree. And that's something that's really frustrating for me, especially since, my whole life is like holistic, woo
Right.
woo, whatever. And people, I feel like, put a lot of pressure on me too. And it's like, I can only do so much. Cause at the same time, it's like, this is his journey. This is like God's in control. Like I'm not God. I can't like, open the book and rewrite what's going to happen. So it's a lot of pressure too. Um, but I think hopefully, all the cancer will be gone. Everything will be fine. But it's a long journey, and it's just tough too. And I don't know how you feel, Matt, but I feel like sometimes, like if I don't feel good or if I'm struggling with something, I feel almost like I can't share it because it's like I'm complaining, but he's going through something worse than I am. Like, do you ever feel like that? Like you feel like you shouldn't compare your experience with hers?
I don't know if I ever, and it's been going on for, I guess, 8 years now. I mean, it really depends, I guess, with certain things. I just, I don't know if I really have an answer for that question, to be honest with you.
That's fair.
I don't
Yeah,
know if I know.
yeah.
I think
Because
that sometimes you do. I think you have mentioned how you kind of, feel like you can't complain about certain things. Like, oh, like if you have a backache, you're like, well, you're in worse pain because you're got like your ovaries bursting essentially kind of thing. I have heard you mention that sometimes. I think we try to support
I don't really
with
remember, to be honest with you. It depends on the
right.
situation, and I don't know. It's funny. You brought up something that was interesting about people trying to help. Like, just to kind of, do you mind if I go back for just a second? Because I
Yeah,
didn't really have to say anything.
yeah.
I think that it comes from a good place. Like, people are trying to help, but like, I think it becomes an exercise in patience. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're trying to do something that's harmful, but if those people are doctors or just going to throw out the credential chiropractors, um, they're trying to make money off of therapeutic treatment from you. And I think that that situation, maybe that will help. Maybe it's a placebo. Maybe it's just something that would actually help in some consequential way. It's obviously not going to cure something like cancer. The infrared, for example, may help with, I don't know, something, swelling. I don't know,
Hmm.
but doesn't necessarily mean it's going to get rid of metastasized cancer or whatever. That, was the most, I would say that was the most frustrating thing when we were going on the wild goose chase with Mary, trying to figure out what was going on in the beginning. And these people would present us. I think I probably brought this up last time we spoke, but brought up these like $14,000 treatments. I'm like, well, I mean, if you're going to make me pay 14 grand, unless you're putting a roof on my house as well as doing this, I'm going to have to see some sort of scientific paper, study, evidence, tea leaves. I don't care what it is that shows that it's actually going to do anything without providing false hope and taking advantage of people. That's the most frustrating thing. I think that, like, on Bobby Joe or whatever is telling you that you got to drink chamomile tea for 7 weeks straight and eat carrots off of the back of a mule, and then spin around 3 times in a full moon, and then all of a sudden everything will be fixed. I mean, maybe her grandmother told her that. I don't know. But I
Yeah,
feel like it's a lot more innocent than somebody who's trying to nail you for like $14,000 to, go stand in a sauna.
that's true. That's a very fair
I
point.
learned something.
But you also reminded me that most of the time with this, like for instance, if he has pain or nausea or things like that, they automatically go to narcotics. They're like, okay, take some morphine, take this and this and that, like hard drugs, like hard drugs. Like if we had it in the car going, like we probably get arrested, like hard drugs, right? And that has pretty much been the whole experience. Is like, well, sometimes I have a headache. Oh, we need to give him 5 milligrams of whatever, like these crazy medicines, and they have horrible side effects, like absolutely not, like not just the potential for becoming addicted to narcotics, but like for instance, in the beginning his pain was so bad they did give him morphine, and it was so sad because it was literally like living with like somebody doing heroin. Like he would be sitting there and just like nodding out like in the middle of a sentence, and then there's all these horrible side effects, like it brings you pain in different parts of your body because you're so sick from this like hard medicine. So that's another problem too, is if you are constantly going to these western doctors, even though I do think, especially in this situation, it's necessary, they don't look at like other holistic ways, kind of like what you're mentioning. It's just, here, take this pill that could make it worse but also better. So I do agree that things like tea, meditation, and breath work can help. I think it's just finding the balance, and I guess that's like what we're lacking in society. It's either, here, take the morphine, or here, like, try chamomile tea.
Yeah, exactly. There really is no like connection between the two. It's really hard to find someone who will do both because they both can be helpful in different ways. But yeah, exactly. Just like the certain supplements are pushed holistically, then the prescriptions are pushed when you're working with a Western medicine doctor. And it is hard to know what to do. And especially with those things like side effects, you're taking such a risk either way.
Yeah.
It's
It's
the goal of that. I mean, I guess at that point, they're just thinking from the perspective, how do I make everything go away so it's not a problem anymore? Well, you know, keep the oxycodone on for a little bit and you won't feel anything anymore. That's the goal that they're trying to, you know, achieve. That's the word.
Yeah. And I almost feel like, especially with those harder medications, especially from like being a spiritual person looking at it, it's almost like when you take those medicines, it's kind of like your body and your soul separate. Like your body kind of goes to sleep and your soul is kind of like like hovering over yourself. Like it's very weird. Like if you ever seen somebody having to take those, it's like, it's hard to explain, but it's literally like your body and your soul separate, and your body is just knocked out, and your soul is like in a different plane. It's very weird. And I think that's what happens with people who take a lot of medicine. Like for instance, like the whole ADD, like everyone's got ADD all of a sudden. But I remember this kid in like fourth grade who had really bad kind of ADD, ADHD, whatever. And he was constantly like over here, over there. But he was just so smart that like he needed to be stimulated by all these different things. But then some days he would come to school and he would just be like, the whole
Like
time. And
Mhm.
we'd be like, "Dude, like, what's wrong with you?" He's like, "Oh, I took my medicine today." But he's like a zombie.
Yeah, it is weird since it does change how someone normally is. And yeah, definitely it is one of those things where it's like, do the benefits outweigh the effects, and kind of decide that. I mean, I kind of get what you're saying. Oh, I haven't taken some of those really hard things. It just reminds me of, when they kept pushing Xanax on me. I had migraines. I don't know how that helps with that, but whatever reason they were pushing that. I think it was one of those cycles of you just have anxiety, like it's not really anxiety, so take the Xanax. So I did, but after only a few times, I mean, again, like these things are very addicting, just like pain. Like I stay away from the pain medication for that reason because I know that I'll change as a person
Yeah.
if I get that like break from the pain. And yeah, it is a little scary. Like I kind of get what you're saying with that. With like, it does feel like you're not connected to your body and when you take those things.
At least for him, he's actually stopped taking his medicine because, like I said, the side effects were so much worse. Um, but you know what I'm starting to feel like, and like maybe you might relate. I mean, your treatment and everything is a lot different because this just has a very specific treatment. But I almost feel like there should be some type of mandatory therapy, that like talk therapy that people should go through with it as well. Because I remember, Matt, you talked a lot in the other episode about mental health being just as important as the physical health. And especially when it's because we know that there is trauma involved with illnesses as a origin and also during. So, if they had a professional to talk to, I think it could um double the healing. That's not the words I want to use, but you know what I mean? Like it would just, you're doing physical and emotional healing at the same time, which I think would benefit more than just, oh, here's a Xanax or here's a, whatever anxiety medication. What do you think?
I absolutely agree. I mean, I find therapy essential. I think that, I mean, I think there's reasons that everyone can benefit. And with working with the right person, and especially if you're going through a serious illness, I mean, it's so much to deal with emotionally and even just the physical effects of treatment and going through a treatment process. It does. It takes a lot on you emotionally and to, like you said, be able to talk to a professional about that and learn how to handle it. I absolutely agree. I think that that should be part of any treatment program.
And I would just say that how do you relate to somebody though after going through something like that if they've never gone through it themselves? I feel like that could lead to more frustration and sort of ostracizing because you're just like, wow, I'm here because now the state wants me to go to therapy, and this guy is just like depends, I guess, if you go to a private therapist or somebody that has experience with that sort of a terminal illness. Otherwise, if you're just going to see some 25-year-old girl or whoever it is,
Yeah, I think
it's
that's
like,
a fair point. Yeah.
okay, what
Yeah.
am I going to talk about with you?
I mean, and there are therapists who do specialize in patients going through cancer treatment or other illnesses. So I think that connecting those therapists with hospitals, I think would be a good way to resolve that, making sure that these people have. I don't feel like I need my therapist to understand exactly what I went through as long as they have the knowledge of it and know the tools to help. But I know for some people they really do want to have that personal connection. So I think maybe having a directory of therapists that can be, shared with patients would be helpful.
I think that's a good point. I think maybe group therapy could even be a good idea because that's another thing about like sitting in that waiting room for radiation or even chemo and all that stuff. Like everyone's going through it. And every so often we'd have these really, really like meaningful conversations with people. And it just kind of makes everyone feel like, I called it the cancer club, that's like not funny, but it kind of is that way because they're like, "Oh, check this out," and they've got their chemo port, and they're like, "What are you here for?" It's almost like it's like this camaraderie that's like tragic, but also like relatable at the same time. I don't know. I just think something like that could be beneficial, but I guess you're right. If it's mandatory, also, it's kind of like I think people might resent that, but I think in the long run, it would still be helpful. You know.
What are the statistics for, I mean, not really age, but just the percentage of people that eventually develop cancer? Is it something like 1 in 3 people?
Be high like that, I think.
I don't know off the top of my head, but probably, especially with what they put in our food. I mean, shit. I mean, I could be sitting here with cancer and not know. You know what I mean? Just how horrible our food system is.
Yeah, it is definitely a growing problem.
You
Yeah,
know how
and
the early 20th century or maybe the 19th century when this was something that you hear a lot about, but like you go to a shoe store and they give you an X-ray to X-ray your shoe, your foot. I mean,
More exposure to
yeah,
radiation.
radiation.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Just basically as like what's the word I was gonna say? Like a memorandum. Can't think of the word. Like here's a X-ray of your foot.
Yeah.
Your new pair of shoes.
Well,
Yeah, but then of
same
course
as
they
like
realize it's a terrible thing to do. And they
yeah.
stop doing it. I just wonder what we're gonna find out like 20 to 30 or 5, 10, or maybe, I don't know, in the next few years. It's like, you keep hearing that they don't sell like red 40 and stuff in Europe. Titanium dioxide. I wonder how much that actually impacts their lives.
No, honestly, it's really bad, especially, now that I have kids in my life. Like a lot of times I don't give them candy at all or even junk food at all. I just don't buy it. But for Halloween, I like let them have some candy. I swear to you, I didn't even recognize them even after they just had like one or two like little candy bars. They had more of an attitude. They were like literally jumping off the wall. Like I don't mean height, like I mean literally jumping off the wall. Like and it's a lot. And even me, I don't have candy. And nobody believes me when I say this because it does sound dramatic. But I literally had like one Sour Patch Kid and I like never have candy. And I actually felt like anxiety in my body for like a whole day. And I wasn't even anxious, but like my stomach had like butterflies. And I was like, I don't know. It was like doing like cocaine or something. I don't even know.
Same
Oh
way
yeah,
you
well,
touch
Sour
it.
Patch Kids are great.
But anytime there's like sugar, you always say
But
if you
rough.
feel that
Sour
anxiety
Patch rough.
and even like that emotion, like like angry for no reason.
Passion.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, I mean, Sour Patch Kids are good, but I've never felt like involuntary anxiety like that. It was weird.
Yeah, I think it is weird how like physically it makes you feel bad, like sugar, but then also like emotionally, like I definitely like that random bouts of like just unexplained rage or panic. It is definitely weird how it affects you.
Hypo. The sugar rush. Yeah, angry.
Yeah, I guess it's a sugar rush. And people say like, "Oh, sugar rush isn't real." I'm like, okay, you
Oh
probably just have so
yeah,
much
work
sugar
with
you don't
enough
realize.
kids and
Eating a Sour Patch Kids.
post lunchtime, it's like a whole different group of children.
Um, but so something that's more happy, a little happier topic. So obviously Chris is still sick. I mean, you don't just like wake up after cancer treatment like, "Oh, I'm so refreshed," right? Like there's still a healing process, but on the days when he feels like really good and kind of more like himself, he talks a lot about us like getting married and doing stuff like that. So I'm like really excited. So it's fun for us to have something to like look forward to. I think that that's really important. So you guys, how long have you guys been married? I think like 4 years, 5.
Like 3.5 years we've been married.
Really?
You say really?
No, I said, oh yeah.
Oh, I thought you said really.
No. Yeah, about 3.5 years.
Yeah.
So like, were you guys nervous about like, what if on the wedding day there's like a flare up or like an emergency? Like, was that a factor?
I was extremely nervous.
Wedding sucked.
Oh yeah, the wedding was rough. That was
It did rain. I remember that.
Oh my gosh, it was so cool. But no, I mean, since even like before I started planning the wedding, I was nervous about that. I'm like, well, what am I supposed to just wear like sunglasses all day? I'm like, I can't see because I have such light sensitivity, and like, what if I'm in so much pain I can't move? Absolutely. um, fortunately, the excitement got me through anything that was not feeling well.
That's good.
Food
That's
was good, you know.
I don't know. I think I don't even remember eating anything.
It's really good.
that is one thing that like is I don't really know how to even describe what it makes me feel, but just kind of knowing that like we don't really know when this is over, I think is a little daunting. And I'm sure you know that because I mean, this whole thing for us hasn't been in the long run hasn't been a long time, but for you it's been like probably feels like forever. Just with your allergies and things like that. So it's kind of daunting. Like, when will it end? Will it end? And it's kind of
Really good that he's looking towards the future and you guys are talking about all these exciting plans and things. I think that's so important to have those positive things to look forward to, especially as a couple. That's one thing that, yeah, I mean, I wanted to be healthy on my wedding day. Like, I didn't want to get married until I was healthy, but eventually you realize, like, I mean, what are you really waiting for? Like, it's, you know, you want the marriage, and it's silly, but I so wanted this, like one thing that I use as a visualization to try to get me through some of the really rough days is like, okay, when I'm healthy, I'm going to be going to an island and laying on a beach, and I'm going to soak up every minute of it. And the part of it that is really like the reason I want it is because I can't go on a beach and not get a migraine because it's so bright. So I'm just picturing like a bright white sand beach, sunny day, and actually being able to fully enjoy it. And so that's something I was like hoping for my honeymoon. But obviously I wasn't there at that point yet, but still trying to like keep that picture in my head to have something to look forward to.
That we went to the second brightest place, which was Alaska in July, 4 in the
You guys had
morning.
fun though, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
it was fantastic.
Yeah, it was
It's amazing.
definitely recommend it.
That was so. I remember when you guys were like, "Oh, we're going to Alaska." I was like, "Alaska? Why are you going all the way to Alaska?" But it
It's
looked
far.
beautiful.
Oh, I mean, it's the most beautiful place I've ever seen. Like,
It really is pretty nice.
mountains are
Pretty
incredible.
sweet. Like every mountain's bigger than that.
Yeah.
But I get what you mean, like wanting to be healthy on your wedding day and stuff, because that's kind of the thing. Like with the cancer treatment, is recovery could be a couple months, it could be a couple years. He could even, I mean, God forbid, but he could even still have cancer when he gets the scans done. So we're definitely gonna wait like at least like a year or so to really like go through with that. But it's even kind of like at some point it's like fuck it, you know,
Right.
like, you can just wait and wait your whole life, and then what, you know. I'm not saying like you should go to the beach if it's gonna make you sick, but like maybe at some point just like trying, you know,
Right. Exactly.
even if you
That was
just
something. Yeah, thinking about with like our vacations and trips, and like there's certain things I was like, oh, I'm saving this for when I feel better. But I'm like, okay, but what if I never, you know, like what if I don't get there? Like this is a chronic illness. Technically, that means it's going to be lifelong, unless some sort of cure happens. So yeah, you do want to make sure you're still living in the meantime and not just waiting for things to get better. But I'm glad that we didn't wait any longer than we did to get married, because you know, like at the end of the day, what exactly are you waiting for? Because nothing's ever going to feel perfect, even if you're fully healthy. There'll always be something going on.
yeah. Yeah, and you never know.
It's bad.
I'm sure
Brain early.
sorry. I'm sure that like you guys can relate to like we talked last time about how like dates can be kind of a hard thing to plan or to have. Have you guys had any improvements with that?
I think so, right? Like we
I
made
was thinking of the fruit when you said that. You mean like a date between?
like I thinking about, okay, like say we went to that corn maze over in the fall.
Yep.
And that was a fun, like we made the point to go on a date. But like one like all right, so you get to the corn maze and you have like 2 options or 3 options or whatever of like length of, you know, how many miles long these things are and how long it's going to take you. And so I think that was just like a good example of we can go have fun, but we're going to choose the easier route and enjoy it for what it is and not push too hard. And it was-
The long one's like 10 miles.
yeah, that was great. Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
But it was a good time. And yeah, it only took us like an hour, but it was a very fun hour.
It's pretty nice. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's been something that's like kind of hard. I mean, obviously he can't like go on a date while he's like throwing up. Like he has this like it's gonna sound bad, but he has this like throw up bucket that he brings with him like everywhere. And so obviously like we're not gonna bring that somewhere. But we did make a joke that like when he's fully recovered, we're gonna like make like a plaque or like a special encasing for the bucket, like like in memory of the bucket. But
Oh, well, I don't fully relate to that specifically. I did have like a plastic bag for quite a while that I carried everywhere with me for that reason, because I would have so much regurgitation of like my digestive issues that it was so hard to go anywhere in the car, and even just like by my bed at night. So yeah, I do get not feeling up for a date when you are in that stage. But that's where that just quality time at home. I mean, just sitting next to each other, talking, be the best thing.
yeah. And we
We
oh go
got
ahead.
to Does he have a feeding tube, or he can't swallow, I'm assuming, right?
So he has a feeding tube for a little while, like maybe like a month. That's the only way he could get all his nutrients, like water. Well, he was doing like these like supplement milkshake things and water through the tube, which was a lot of work. Like, because the thing is, I was basically like his live-in nurse, so like I had to do like every single little thing all the time. And I'm not complaining, but like it's a lot. But now he can eat and drink, but one of the side effects is that food like tastes really horrible. And yeah, the throat pain obviously is an issue. So he kind of does a mix of both, which is a blessing because the doctor even told us that most people can't use their mouth at all at this point and where he's at. So like we're definitely lucky in some aspects that he can still swallow now, because it was rough for a while. But yeah.
Yeah, that is a really serious cancer, and happy to hear that he is at least able to swallow a bit and we seeing some improvements soon as he recovers. That is so difficult. That's one thing that if you can't, we don't realize what a significant part of our life that food is, like even just in our social gatherings and day to day, like connection with each other. And it really is when you can't swallow or eat, it can feel very isolating and just like you're losing part of yourself. It's weird. I hope that he does recover quickly with that.
What is crazy is a lot of this is very depressing, but he told me that like he doesn't care if he's in pain, he doesn't care if he's throwing up, but he said the thing that makes him the most sad is that he can't taste food. Which is also ironic because before all of this, he wasn't a foodie. He'd be like, "Oh, I don't care what we eat, like whatever, like I'll just have a sandwich." And now he's like, "I want to try this. I want to try this." So it's kind of like also taught him to like appreciate it more and like try more foods too. So there's always like an equal negative and equal positive with things.
Yeah, yeah, I could definitely see how that would change your perspective, but that's good that he yeah, is getting to fully feel that. That is something that never has left me since I, like, wasn't able to swallow for that time period, um, is just that appreciation of every chance I get to eat. It does change your mentality on it, so that's right, it's true, there is still a good with the negative.
Is he going to be able to swallow, I guess, food that isn't liquid anytime soon, or is that going to be months?
He can actually have some solid food. It just usually like nothing crunchy, like nothing that could scratch him.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So he could handle like maybe like some soft bread or like fries. He'll eat fries a lot. Yeah, so he just has to be careful. But what's crazy is I know the throat is important, but like when you really have an issue here, it's not just even like swallowing, but it's also breathing. And that's the scariest is like choking. Oh god. It's so scary. And then like, your thyroid is like so important, like your hormones and everything. Like, my God, like your throat is so important. And it's crazy how, especially when you're young, right? Like you don't care if you smoke cigarettes and you drink all day and you freaking, just abuse your body so bad. And it's just crazy to think of all the abuse your body takes like all the time, at least for like the average person, you know what I mean? And like for me, this whole process I've been pretty sedentary, like just sitting with him a lot. I mean, I do get up to like, clean something, get him something, fill up the feeding tube bag and all this, but like a lot of times I'm just sitting there like with him. So like I've definitely put on some weight and like I'm like really out of shape. It's pretty bad. And I've realized that like because I would beat myself up, be like, oh, I should be doing better. I should be like more active and doing more. But I realized that like I needed this body to like get me through it. So it's also kind of taught me that even if our bodies aren't in the best shape, like we have to still appreciate it because like my body could just shut down, but it's still fighting for me. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, that's so true. Like you just want to make sure you're loving your body no matter what stage of life you're in and what is happening, because our body is the one thing that is always there supporting us and keeping us going.
Yeah. Whew, the body goes through a lot. Like think of everything you've ever like gone through. Like your body went through it too. And just the fact that it can like self-heal. I mean, of course we all have our issues, but like it does try to self-heal. It like carries you everywhere. Like, oh, sometimes thinking about the body is like, oh, like what is this?
But they're amazing.
What are you thinking over there, Matt? You look very serious.
No, I was just saying, what caused it to begin with? Was it a GERD thing or a hiatal hernia or something? I know because had something to do with, I guess, his esophagus, right? Because he didn't you say he had Barrett's esophagus?
So, okay, so let's see. So at first, like before we found out anything, he was always like very like strangely lethargic, and he would complain like how weak he felt, which was like very unusual because he's always been like very active. And then one day he like lost his voice. So we thought like, oh, you just talk too much, like, you lost your voice, no big deal. But then his voice like was gone for months, and he would always complain that like his throat was burning. So eventually we found out that he had like a really large like tumor like all in his throat, and it paralyzed one of his vocal cords. I guess the tumor was like growing like on his vocal cords basically, and it was getting so big to the point where like if it kept growing like he would have like basically he wouldn't have been able to breathe, let alone like talk. So it was like really bad, like just a huge like tumor, or no, I guess the left side, like a huge tumor in here.
That's so scary. I'm just yeah, it's it's just scary, especially with esophageal. We know how quickly that can progress. So I'm very, you guys have been in my thoughts so much over the last several months, just hoping for the best.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was bad too because since it's stage 4. So stage 4 basically means like it's spread to more than just the original area. So he actually had it in his lymph nodes too, which is really really bad, but he's kind of lucky because they said that if it had gone to his lymphatic system, basically you're dead. Like if it's in your whole lymphatic system, like they basically said like you would be dead. Like it'd be a matter of time. So he's very lucky that it was just, I mean, not lucky. I mean, nobody's lucky with this, but you know what I mean? Like, it was just here, so it could have been a lot.
Yeah, glad I caught it when he did. That's just one of the other like scariest parts of the process is the amount of waiting time between scans and just getting into a specialist and like knowing that these things are urgent is a frustrating part of our healthcare system.
Yeah, and it was pretty much all on me to like be on top of everything and like scream at people because, well, one, he couldn't even talk. So I mean, he literally couldn't do anything. Like the worst was, honestly, I kind of disagree. So before he had to start his treatment, they had to like examine his teeth, basically because you need to have like a healthy jawbone and everything. But they had to take out his wisdom teeth in order for him to like do the treatment. Which, looking back, I think I should have questioned that a lot more. But anyway, so what they did was they just like gave him an injection to like numb his mouth, but he couldn't even speak. So they did the shot and they tried to ask him like, "Are you good?" And he was kind of like, "Oh, I don't know," but he like couldn't talk, right? But I'm watching, and then they started to pull out his tooth, and I saw his body like all like tense up. So I'd have to be like, "Hey, stop!" Like, he can feel it. So that's like the hard part is like when somebody can't even speak, and you have to like talk for them. Like that's probably the most stressful shit in the world.
Absolutely. You really have to be able to read his body language and just know him and be aware of what's going on. I can't even, I would imagine that'd be really stressful. And I would think that for him too, that's where that energy work kind of comes into play is when you aren't able to speak for yourself and you have something you want to say, like how that can cause blockages. And it's something that you want to make sure you're working through and releasing because yeah, I can picture how that could make, your body feel and the kind of trauma it can hold on to be like, okay, maybe you're not feeling good and you can't express it, or maybe you want something to be a little different, but you can't communicate that. That's definitely a emotional thing to go through.
Yeah, but everything is good now. I don't want it to sound like, like everything is getting a lot better. So, like I feel like I'm not as worried as I was before. Like I really feel like everything's going to be all right. And even if it's not, I feel like I don't know. I feel like we've just accepted the process. But it
I
is
mean, yeah, you both have been doing amazing with just staying positive and getting through it, doing what needs to be done and staying strong. So definitely should feel proud of yourselves.
Thank you. But I definitely it's funny too because I feel like my I'll probably hopefully I'll never be single again. But I feel like if I was, I feel like my standards are so much higher because even though he like couldn't take care of himself and half the time he couldn't even like really speak, he still made me feel like loved and appreciated. So I'm just like, wow, if some able-bodied man could not make me feel loved and appreciated, like they're a sack of shit. Like this dude's over here fighting for his life and I still feel loved. You know what I mean?
How do you feel?
Me?
Yeah.
Do I feel loved and appreciated?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel loved and appreciated.
Okay, good.
You. Okay.
Good. But see, that's like what's so crazy is people like, oh, he won't even text me back. I'm like, mm-mm. Nope.
Gotta leave it on our toes.
No.
No.
But anyways, you guys tell me something. What's going on in y'all's life?
Can I bring up something that's sort of, so I heard today that Wim Hof apparently was under all these allegations of abusing his well, I don't know how many wives he said, 2 wives and his kids.
Mhm.
And the thing that I thought was interesting about that was because he always comes off as this almost manic, happy guy in all these videos that you see of him. But can you imagine? And I don't know if it was true or not. I'm assuming maybe it is because they had court records of apparently the abuse. Like they put on these fronts, but I guess it's just to make money. But like I always looked up to Wim just because I thought he was sort of an infectious personality.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, my personal like belief and theory is like anyone who is like ridiculously famous like that more than likely has a lot of skeletons in the closet. Because think of all the amazing people you've met over the course of your life. They're not usually the most successful because they're the ones who are trying to like genuinely make a difference and like help people who really need it. I'm not saying that every rich person is bad, but I just feel like, people like Wim Hof and even Jane Goodall, like the lady who hangs out with the gorillas and monkeys, I don't really trust her either, because it's just think about all the people who do wildlife conservation and all that are just so poor and just struggle so much and like nobody gives a shit about them. Like I just feel like it's I don't know. I just think we should always be careful when we look up to people because at the end of the day, we're all just flawed, you know?
yeah, I was thinking about that a lot this morning. I don't know how to work that into this conversation, but yeah, I woke Mary up out of his sleep. I was like, "Did you know that?"
Thanks. Haven't slept in several nights, so thank you for that.
Yeah, I know you've mentioned Wim Hof a lot, but I get what you mean. Like it sucks, like you look up to somebody and then it's like they say don't meet your heroes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. I
Yeah.
never met the guy, but
I
apparently he
mean,
was mean to the people he met.
I don't know. That's the sort of thing where I'm like, well, if someone's philosophy or their art or what, works for you or touches you, can you separate them? And I know to an extent you can't, but I don't think anything he says about breathing exercises is gonna be detrimental. I mean, I definitely have seen it help you.
Hurts his credibility a little bit though, because you look at the
Well,
person
for
as
him.
sort of.
No, yeah, but
Well,
I
I
mean for
mean, yeah,
somebody doing the exercises.
right?
Like if it works for you, it works for you.
Well, it's kind
Yeah.
of like it's like having like an overweight personal trainer, like they can help you, but maybe they just can't help themselves.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that.
That is kind of funny,
I
but
would hire that.
huh?
Said I don't know if I would hire that because it's a competitive market out there. You know.
I
Yeah.
think that kind of goes back to what I'm saying with like a therapist that you connect with, like one who is, yeah, like I guess it depends on the person. Some people want their role model to be the embodiment of what they're trying to be. And others, it's just if they can connect with you, they can connect with you.
Yeah,
It
but
depends on the person.
I mean, I guess if it's in their purview, but I mean, if you're not going to ask somebody who's been divorced 3 times marital advice,
Yeah, that's different.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's the older I get, the more I realize this. You never really know who somebody is. Never.
Mhm.
Even if, honestly, even if you live with them. I'm not saying, like, don't be like all weird with each other now, but like, sometimes you really never know who somebody really is. Cause I found out shit about people that like I would have never thought in a million years, or even just weird stuff. Like I've always had this fear that I would date somebody, move in, and find like a jar of like fingernails under the bed or something. Because people are so weird. Like you never really know like what people do. It's just scary.
Everybody's got some really weird. secrets and then just things that are not so true. You don't. I mean, we know each other extremely well at this point, but nobody, like nobody in our life knows us as well as we know each other ourselves. Like it's definitely very, very true. And I
Yeah,
think
like
that's
you never.
something important to keep in mind with any kind of public figure like that. Like we don't know them at all. We only see what they show.
Yeah, that's why I hate when people are like, "Oh my god, I would die for Beyonce. I love her so much." It's like, girl, you don't know if she's a serial killer,
Yeah.
and she probably is, to be honest. But I get it though.
Draw our fingernails. Where'd you invent that from?
I don't know. It's just something I came up with as a kid that like I don't know. I've always thought about some weirdo that has like a jar of like nail clippings they've kept. I don't know why.
Like of their own nail clippings or like other? Is
Like
this
both. Like just like a
a
collection.
mixture, like a
That would be the deal
amalgam of
breaker.
people's fingernails? Where do you get them from?
I guess like when somebody's sleeping, like you clip them off.
That'd be really nice and convenient. If you did that, I wouldn't mind if you kept them in the bed.
Honestly, I could see
I've
like
been thinking about cutting my toenails for like a week now. I got to do it myself now.
Yeah, you have to do
Jar
it
in
yourself. You do.
well, you could go to a salon.
Good. You get pedicures.
Yeah, a lot of guys do that.
Yeah, maybe if I start selling pics, I'll do that.
Hey, there's a market for like, men feet too.
Dude, baby. I don't know if I'm ready for that excitement right now.
You know what? I actually want to talk about the feed pictures because I don't know how I feel about it because on the one hand, of course, like it's strange, but then it's like everyone has their weird thing that they're into. But it's like morally though. Like, do you guys think it's morally wrong to sell your feet pictures for sexual reasons or not?
Was this
It's just
on the
feet.
schedule? You have like a script.
I'm
What?
Was this on the script?
No, I just
I
thought of it.
just need an email copy of this question, so I don't know how to answer it.
But you know what I mean? Like, is it wrong to sell your feet pictures or no? Like, I don't. It's like just weird. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's weird.
Wrong to who?
Like, I don't think it's wrong if that's your thing, because like you said, everybody has got their thing and it's all gonna be whatever. I do think it's wrong to sell your body in any way. Like I see that as selling your body, and I don't think that's the fulfilling thing to be doing.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of like selling your dignity a little bit. But I
Yeah.
could see how people be like, "Oh, it's just a foot," but then it's like, but then where do we draw the line?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
okay, so do you know how people like these girls in OnlyFans apparently, I make $1 million a month. Well, and everybody's retort to that as well. When you turn 35 or whatever the age is, no one's gonna buy, or you know what I mean. There's a million people doing that. I think the answer to that really would be the feet pic, so you can't tell how old somebody is.
Guess if you use enough lotion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that would be like their second career when they're done with the OnlyFans.
Like an additive thing, supplemental.
But it is sad. Have you seen all those girls that like did OnlyFans? Now they're trying to get a real job and they can't. It's like, gee, I wonder if you would have thought about that, like before.
Right.
I mean, did they put it on their resume? Because how are you gonna know?
You do it back. You just Google somebody that's applying for your job, and that's what comes up.
Like a background check.
I don't know if that's. Come on.
You don't
No,
think
it
it's
is.
true?
It is.
I don't think so.
No.
What are you applying for? The federal government, FBI? Like, what are they still trying to work
No,
for?
but a lot of companies have like a moral code.
Oh my gosh,
And
wait, you guys, I have to tell you this. One time I applied to work at this Dunkin' Donuts and the manager girl was sending me a text to like schedule an interview, but when she texted me, it automatically for some reason put her like Apple ID like profile picture and it was a picture of her in her bra and underwear all like and her name was like Piper. And I was like, Piper, I'm not coming to the interview. You need to check out your like contact information. Cause she's probably texting like all her coworkers. They're not telling her.
that's so rough.
Wow, really?
Jeez.
It was bad. I was like, nobody has ever told this girl that she's like half naked whenever she texts somebody.
Oh, that's terrible. It's a good thing you told her.
Yeah, that was bad. I was like, no, I'm not working there.
You're telling me that that's like a huge So what happens if it's like a spam or text? They can only see your picture when you text them.
No, I think
Yeah.
it's only if they text you first.
Okay.
Yeah, because some people have like, because like for instance, I think if I were to text you and you don't have me saved, it would just be my number and just a plain thing. But if I have it set on my Apple ID to have my name automatically and like either one of those like emojis or a picture of me, then you would get it
Oh,
if you
hmm.
have an iPhone.
I do not.
Oh, then it might not happen to you then. I'll have Piper text you guys.
They sent Piper looking for a job at BD.
Double D. Oh my god. Oh man, that's so funny. I honestly wish we lived closer.
Me too. I miss you.
Or I think
Where do you live now?
it might be let's see, if you're in Easton, I might just be 4 or 5 hours away.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think. Yeah, I think it's like 5 hours away.
Yeah. Oh, actually, Matt, I wanted to ask you, but
Yeah.
I feel bad like putting you on the spot. But like
Is it a bird question?
no.
Okay.
So like you obviously like you and Mary, like you guys are very close, but I'm sure there's times when like you want to hang out with like friends or kind of do your own thing. And I know you kind of just recently moved, so like do you have any friends? How do you get friends?
How do I get friends?
Yeah, I guess from work.
I don't know, like work or
Yeah.
the neighbors. I don't know. You just talk to people. I don't know. I mean, it's different for guys and girls, I guess. Though.
Yeah,
Yeah,
probably.
you have friends through work.
Yeah.
And then
I
like
feel like I made friends with like the contractors that came to my house.
I guess because you're a Libra, you just like talk to everybody.
I didn't want to give away my secrets, but probably.
But like how do you like when you want to do something on your own? I mean, I know you could just like go for a walk or go do something, but like do you have like a weekly like friend hangout or is it kind of more just random?
I don't know, like every other. I would say like every other week.
The
I
reason I
don't know. I mean, I so that's sort of a back like years ago. It was difficult because Mary just gets afraid that something's going to happen to her when I'm not here. So, and I understand that. So I tell her in advance, like I'm not just a 17-year-old boy about it. Where I'm like, okay, I'm going by. Like obviously, I can't do that. I mean, I feel like that's sort of a standard for pretty much any relationship. Otherwise, maybe you got to check your maturity levels, I guess, a little bit there. If you can just, if you can just walk out and do whatever you got to do, because there's other people that rely on you. It's like just as if like she wanted to do something and now she can't do it because I'm not home. It's like you weigh your responsibilities.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I feel like it's gotten better, and of course, if she's not feeling well, I mean, these things are totally random. So yeah, I think it's getting
Yeah.
better.
I think I've worked really hard on being honest and more honest about like, no, I want you home today. Because in the past, I'd feel so guilty about it. I'd be like, no, like go ahead. But then he's there for like 20 minutes. I'm like, no, I actually really need you and you got to come home. So I try to avoid that.
Does
I just,
happen.
yeah, sometimes it happens, but I try to let you know if like I do need you around, which it isn't, too often that happens. But I've also been really working on being a little more independent and handling things. Because I think we kind of realized, or at least I realized how much I do rely on him still and see him as like like a caretaker, like helping me through things. And I had to challenge myself a little bit of like, okay, what if he wasn't in your life though? How would you handle this? And pushing myself now that I have been going through it for long enough that it's easier to gauge what's an emergency and what is just something happening again. And even though it's scary still and uncomfortable, if it's something that I've been through a few times, I know that it'll pass and try to get through it more on my own without, interrupting his night or his plans.
Aw, I love that. But yeah, the reason I ask is just because Well, for most of this, he's really needed me to be home, you know, but it definitely began to take a major toll on like my mental health. So what I would do is literally I would just like sit outside and kind of like listen to music or maybe call somebody or whatever. But now that like he's kind of a little bit more independent, I mean, he still needs me sometimes, but he's a little bit more independent and like, but I almost feel guilty, and I know I probably shouldn't, but I almost feel guilty if I'm like, "Hey, I'm gonna go out and, you know, go downtown with somebody or whatever," because I just feel bad, like, he would love to do that. So it's kind of this hard thing of, like, I feel guilty, but then what if he needs me? So I don't know, I feel like maybe I'm going through what you guys went through in the beginning of your relationship, you know what I mean? So it's just kinda like I was wondering how often it might be, like, appropriate, I guess, to go out and hang out with friends or, like, you know what I mean?
And I don't know if there's like a straight answer
It's
for
Yeah.
that. Otherwise, it really depends on what you feel you need. I think having time to yourself every week is makes sense. It's important. Um, one, my advice, if I would give any, is to try to break away from the like full-time caregiver as soon as you are able to get back into that like romantic couple relationship, still being there for him and helping take care of him. But yeah, I think that's something I wish I had known, was that it can make your relationship harder, kind of like kill the romance a bit, or even just that independence as like two individual people who need to do their own thing sometimes. It's just to try to break away from that like very dependent caregiver, like patient relationship essentially, and just try to get, you know, building in a little more time that you can as individual people that are in love.
Mhm. And what do you think, Matt?
I mean, I was going to bring that up actually. It's you view the person as less exciting in a way, like with describing Mary. Just because you view them as sort of like, well, I can't do anything because of this, and we're not doing anything that's exciting. You know, we can't just go and live you know, a crazy lifestyle like we're in our early 20s or late teens because it's just the condition doesn't really allow that. But at the same time, you got to make it exciting. It's like it's sort of a meditative thing. You kind of have to look at it from a different viewpoint, I guess. But I think it's just important that I think people have this white, kind of generic white picket fence view of the world and relationships, and guys especially, they just always want. I don't know how to describe like the excitement, the dopamine hit of like talking to a new girl. That sort of. I'm not talking about like the excitement of like the first few dates of a relationship.
Yeah,
So
that's a different
in
thing.
general, that's what I'm saying. In general, in standard relationships, like even like things, it's like the honeymoon phase, right? Disappears like after a few years or whatever it is, sometimes even less than that. And it's a different perspective when you're dealing with someone and dealing with a relationship that isn't your standard run of the mill healthy. You have to make sacrifices, you have to change your viewpoint, you have to be mature about it. And I'm coming off sort of juvenile when I'm saying this, but it's true. Really, I think it is. You gotta have to change your perspective of life. It's like a lot of guys in general, I think that they're stuck in their teenage years where it's like mommy will make it right, don't worry about it. But at some point you have to accept responsibility. And like with a relationship, you have to be selfless to an extent. Of course, the other person has to be selfless too. It's all about like sacrifices in order to, and not all the time, but um, you have to kind of stand your ground and decide if you're going to be an adult person or if you're going to continue down the same spirals and circles that you've been in before. It's like you have to make the decision if you want to get married, if you want to take things to the next step. And it doesn't really matter if the person is sick or not in that situation, if there's any issue, because there's always problems in life. You can get hit by a car tomorrow and be perfectly healthy. Oops. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everything was going so well and then it wasn't. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Anything can happen. You get mauled by an alligator. I don't know. If aliens come down, who knows? Spaceship lands on you, you broke your leg. Who knows?
Could be.
So it's almost irrelevant. It's just, it shows your character as a person, you know, and for me, it's a growing phase of just patience. And what I'm discovering now is that, like, you know, how people, it's Wim Hof, for example, you know, his first wife had schizophrenia. Difficult to be in that situation. I've been with several people, one in particular that had very bad bipolar disorder, extremely difficult. You don't really know your true character because it hasn't really been tested yet. So with him in that situation, you know, it's very easy for other people to say, well, you're a bad person because you emotionally abused your wife. I'm sure there's two sides to the story if that even happened, but it's a lot harder to be in that situation than it is to just watch it from you know, a YouTube screen and, well, somebody else is talking about him. You know, the same thing. We just got a German Shepherd puppy. She's a year old now. She's a very difficult creature to live with. Very hard. It's very trying. And you know, you look at yourself and you're like, well, thank God this isn't a child because I don't like the way I just acted. And those realizations, I think, transfer in a variety of different ways. But it's at some point in time, you just have to wake up and look at yourself. Be like, you know, I'm not better than anybody else. Like, if I think that, I'm just going to use Wim Hof. Wim Hof was that great of a guy, and he still succumbed to these pitfalls, then maybe I'm not above that myself. So I better make the changes to make sure that doesn't happen. So that somehow, I guess, translates to being with somebody that has.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, no, I get what you mean. Like your true character is revealed because I feel like I've realized that I'm a very helpful person. I don't know. I feel like I've realized a lot this last year, especially since this past year I just turned 25. So my frontal lobe is like completely developed, and I feel like I understand so much more of things I used to not understand. Like I've realized that I'm a very helpful person, and a lot of times I've overhelped in situations where I should have just minded my business, or like helped in situations that were helpless. I've also realized that like a lot of times in my life people have made fun of me and I didn't even understand, because I feel like I had this mentality of like, oh well, if I'm nice to them they're always nice to me, or if I'm honest to them they're honest to me. Obviously that's not true, that's not how it works. But for so long I believed that, and I realized that like in this life you do have to be, I don't want to say hard, but a little bit. You know what I mean? You do have to kind of protect yourself. Just be smart and discerning. But I have learned that I do have a little bit of like a temper. That's something I never really realized. So that's something that I've been working on too. I'm not saying that I'm like popping off on people, but like it can be really stressful when you've got like somebody you love is throwing up over here, but then in the other room the kids are breaking stuff and screaming, and it's like ah, you know. So like I've learned
Absolutely.
like, you know, discipline needs to happen, especially in that situation. But it's also like you don't want to take your anger out on people or on situations. Like taking a deep breath, you know, or even just saying I can't deal with it right now, I'm gonna go outside for a minute, you guys figure it out, you know. So I get what you mean, like with your dog and like not being proud of how you might have responded, but it's also hard in the heat of the moment. So I've learned like apologizing is really important. Like, especially if I do, for instance, snap at the kids or whatever, take them and be like, I'm sorry, I'm stressed out. So, like, yeah, I get what you mean. I've learned so much, but it's also reaffirmed to me that, like, the relationship I'm in is really good, because there have been a lot of really hard moments. And, you know, he's apologized to me, I've apologized to him. And, like I said, he still made me feel appreciated and supported, even when he, like, couldn't even support himself. You know what I mean? So, I've learned a lot about people and relationships. And I think I'm at a point where I will never overgive or even give to anyone unless they ask me, and unless it's somebody who I know would do the same for me. That's probably the biggest takeaway this year.
I think that's an incredible thing to take away, especially at, only 25. If you can keep that in mind through the rest of your life, I think that is a great way to protect yourself and who you are while still getting to be that helpful person that you love to be. And I like what you said about how you guys apologize to each other and still support each other even when it's stressful. I think that is how you know you're in a good relationship, because I've like going through life in general, especially life when a partner is sick, it's very, very stressful, and you can easily take it out on each other. And just, I think that's one thing that I always appreciated in you, is that even if it's me who's stressed out and snapping, or if it's you, like, we always kind of come back and apologize and quickly resolve that. And I think that yeah, that is a really good sign of a solid relationship.
It's funny, people always mention like love language, right? Like, that's one thing, and it's good to recognize the different types of love. What are there, like 47 love languages or something? Who knows? That they're still discovering new love languages in the bottom of the ocean, whatnot. Um, but there's also, I think, it's kind of funny, hate language or like argument language.
Yeah,
I think argument language is like a better way of saying hate
yeah,
language.
I would agree
What
with
is your
that.
hate language? I think that's like how people argue and fight, and then understanding, I guess, limits. And of course, like with any argument, you can't like say things because you kind of remember what people say and do during those situations, even if it's unfortunate. It's hard to forget that shit.
Mhm.
Um, sorry, bad word. Uh, but I think that one thing with Mary and I's relationship that kind of threw me off because I always thought it was proper to have like a cool down period after an argument. And this isn't always 100% consistent, but she told me that she really needs to have everything addressed and talked about like immediately. Otherwise, it makes things worse. I'm like, I don't really like that. But what I actually kind of found, and I think this is like the case with a lot of guys, they don't want to deal with someone who's angry at them. They don't want to confront that and just get like, basically dumped on twice. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? But I think it's important just to go in there, put your armor on and get the sword out of your hand. And and talk about it immediately. And that was new to me. I didn't know. But maybe nobody else told me. Who knows? I was probably too stupid to ask. But I feel like it's a good like first date question. If we get into an argument on this first
How do
date,
you prefer
how do you
to?
how do you prefer I handle it?
Well, and
You
that
can go home and don't talk to me.
that was the thing for me too. Is like I said, I always like to just hash it out immediately, get it over with. And it made me very uncomfortable to have to let you cool off. And I think that's where we came up with like that time limit of okay, if we need to take up to an hour to cool off, then we'll do it.
I don't
But
know.
then we're coming. Yeah, we said
There
for
was
a
a
while
time
it was
limit.
like an hour.
Yeah.
And after an hour, we're coming back and we're fixing this. And that did help for a while. And since then that time has shrunk, into pretty much now we just handle things
I
immediately.
try and go for immediately.
Yeah, because we realize that we're gonna resolve whatever it is. So let's just get through it and move on and be happy again.
Yeah, I think that that just shows that you guys are really good at communicating. Because Matt, you said like, oh, maybe you never know, or nobody ever told you. Like, I think everyone is different, but I also think a lot of people have never really seen a truly healthy relationship. I would say maybe even none of us really ever have, but also no relationship's perfect, so it's tricky. But just being able to communicate, like, hey, I need to talk about it now, or even I need time to cool off. Some people can't even communicate that. It's just, well, fuck you, go away, and then they, oh, I said the F word, but whatever. They like storm off into another room or they don't talk for 2 weeks, which is just unhealthy. But you know what I mean? Some people just kind of revert into, I guess, more like childlike temper tantrums instead of like it's you and me versus the problem. That's something I say a lot if I'm in an argument. It's like, it's not me versus you or right or wrong. It's you and me versus the problem and then addressing the problem. Because I
Pretty
think
good.
That
yeah,
approach too.
that's a good thing to remember because I think in the heat of the moment, it's like they're attacking me. You know what I mean? So I have to respond, but it's really just this issue. It's not the two of you. You know what I mean?
That's one thing that I feel like we always tend to do, and it, like if we're really upset, we always still say like "I love you" like in our argument, so that we kind of remember. And maybe it just comes out naturally. I don't know, but like it just exactly that. Like we remember we're on the same team and that we love each other. It's easier to even just hear what the other person is saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
That's a
the
good
thing
one.
that I am really grateful for my parents for, is that they never took that philosophy of like, let's hide our problems from the kids. They wanted us to see what a healthy argument in a marriage looked like because there is no relationship where you're not going to argue sometimes. And so it's not like they were having crazy fights in front of us, but they didn't try to hide that they were arguing. And they really just like, I asked my mom about it one time of like, like kind of why they didn't care if we heard, and she's like, because this is what's going to happen and we're married, like we're always going to work through. I want you guys to know that it's never going to end in divorce. Like we always work it out so that you're prepared when you're married to have these really terrible arguments and know you're going to get through it if you make that decision too.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that's crazy is like, I don't want to make everything about astrology, but Chris and I are both Tauruses. We have like different, like the rest of the chart is different, but we're both Tauruses. So we have almost the same exact responses to a lot of things, which is also just upbringing. It's not completely astrology, but we just happen to like just have the same kind of mentality, which can sometimes make arguments really difficult because we're both like just butting heads because we're just, it's hard to explain. I guess it's stubbornness, right? So we're
Yeah.
just like, I feel this way, and he's like, I feel this way. It's like, ah, you know. But it's just funny because once we like take a deep breath, we're like, okay, we're actually agreeing with each other. Just for some reason, we're like yelling about it. It's
It's
just
so
really
funny how
funny.
often that happens.
But yeah, I think it's just a lot of times it's not even, and maybe you guys can relate. I think sometimes the problem isn't even like you did this or I did this. I think a lot of times it's just stress from other things that like make its way into the relationship. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny,
But
Brent. I think we actually got into 2 arguments recently where we were both arguing the same
The
thing,
exact same
but I
point.
didn't know
But
because I have listening problems.
we just, yeah, we weren't listening to each other and we're saying it differently. But when we realized we're saying the exact same thing.
yeah, that's the thing too, is you can have different communication styles. So it's like you are saying the same thing. It's just one person said it backwards or whatever, you know?
Yeah, that's why it does. You do have to like make a point to listen. I think that's where that idea of like, all right, same team against the problem becomes very helpful.
Yeah. Man, this past year has been so crazy. And Mary, I think about you a lot, like with the Lyme's disease, because like I'll be honest, when he was sick, and even before he was like really sick, I just had this horrible feeling. But when he was about to be diagnosed with cancer, and we all kind of like felt like it was that just because it was so bad, but we didn't want to say it. And I looked up some of his symptoms and it said that he could have had like a really bad case of Lyme's disease. And that just made sense too, because we have so many ticks like in our area. And I know it's not just from ticks, but and we were at the doctor's office before he got diagnosed, and I was like, "Well, what if he has Lyme's disease?" And even the doctor was like, "Huh, that's like a really good guess at what it could be." And then afterwards, I was like, "Poor fucking Mary, dude. Like, she basically has cancer symptoms." You know what I mean? Like, the fact that like it could have been Lyme's disease or cancer, like, I'm not trying to make you feel bad, but like, I just was like, "Oh my god, like that sucks."
Yeah, I think that's one reason why there is quite a group of people trying to advocate for more awareness for things like how serious Lyme is. A lot of people really have no clue how serious it really can get. And feeling that lack of support, and I don't mean this in like cancer is like incredibly hard and terrifying, and it deserves all of the awareness that it has. 100%, it deserves all the support and funding that it has, and more. Um, but there are other illnesses that it is like a very terrifying and intense set of symptoms that just doesn't receive the same support or acknowledgement. And I don't try to compare the two because, like I said, they're both very challenging in different ways. But I think that just continuing to bring awareness to these different diseases and increasing funding and research is important, that it keeps happening.
Yeah.
The one thing with Lyme disease, I think that's difficult is that you have people on both ends of the spectrum. You have like the Lyme disease deniers, and then you have people who it's like
Yeah.
it's everything.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem is you bring this to a normal like lay doctor. You can use that term to describe a doctor, layman doctor. And he's just like, wow, you're digging into something I don't really want to be a part of. And that's a difficult thing. You get both ends of the spectrum. The problem is, yeah, there are people that maybe they're overtreated, and there's people that aren't treated for it at all. So it's like there's a balance, like we say with everything, but both of those things are equally as scary. Like you don't want to be overtreated, you certainly don't want to not have it be diagnosed because then it leads to other issues. Or it could be something else, or it could trigger some. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's something that's really bizarre about illness is that, and without the information, we just don't know. I mean, maybe you already have an existing condition that it exacerbates, or maybe you don't and it caused it. Who knows? I mean, unless we're able to be Elon Musk and create our own galaxy and then recreate all this universe 55 times and come up with all these solutions, scientific experiments. It's difficult to come up with a hard solution.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing where it's like, yeah, when you go to the doctor and they ask you like your medical history, and it's almost the time it's focused on cancers. But checking no to all these questions, I'm like, this doesn't accurately represent my medical history, because it looks like, if you look at this list, oh, she has no problems, like she's fine. These serious things aren't part of her life. Or there are like a lot of, serious conditions that are debilitating that are not listed there. But because it's not on their checklist, they don't really listen to it. They just glance at your paperwork, and then they're not really hearing anything else. So I think that, yeah, just continuing to raise awareness that these are serious things, because even a lot of doctors, like you said, like they don't even want to acknowledge it, because there just hasn't been enough really good research done um, to show that it is serious.
It's just so annoying. And even like, all right, this is very petty. What I'm about to say is very petty, but I feel like everyone, like, there's so much awareness specifically around breast cancer, and breast cancer is horrible. But I feel like the only reason people care is because people are getting their boobs taken off. I literally feel like they just care about boobs. Even like, remember like 2012, you had to like save the tatas,
Yeah,
or I love boobies,
yeah,
or
yeah,
yeah, I love
yeah.
boobies. And
Uh-huh.
it's like, what about, nobody's talking about ball cancer? You know what I mean? Nobody's talking about throat cancer, head cancer, back cancer. Like, I feel like it's not fair to just focus on boobs. Why
Whatever
not have
solid glamorous, exactly. Like it's yeah,
it's and I'm not saying that, obviously breast cancer is horrible, but
it's
I just
horrible.
feel like, why can't we just have like cancer awareness month? It doesn't have to be breast cancer awareness.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So it's like you
And
only care about boobs.
yeah, that's kind of what comes across. And yeah, it's great that more awareness for breast cancer is going on, but it's that same thing. There are so many cancers that people don't even have on their radar as something to, like, they won't even know if they have it right away, because they're not aware. Like we know, like, okay, check, feel your
Yeah.
guys, check for lumps. Like these are the things that we're taught. Like, okay, like what else? Because there's a lot else out there, and then time is always of the essence of those things. So
Yeah, so I want to say that'd be like 2017. It was when I first started really talking to Mary. I self-diagnosed myself with LPR, which is, I can't even pronounce, laryngopharyngeal reflux, because ever since I was about 13 or 14 years old, my mother would feed me a lot of fruit, and I would just constantly go, and like it got to the point where I couldn't really even speak a sentence. So I kept being prescribed like Zyrtec and stuff like that, and it would never help, because the issue really wasn't that I had allergies, but everyone's like, "Oh, you have post nasal drip." So it was really this acid reflux. I'm sure I've brought this up before. So I read a book about this. It was called the acid reflux diet. And in order to solve the problem, what I essentially did was I weeded out all the foods till I found like a base level pH. I think it was actually just about neutral. Everything else would activate the pepsin. So basically, LPR is there's two different digestive enzymes: hydrochloric acid, pepsin. And when that got up to my throat, it would essentially stay there for like 4 or 5 days at a time. So even if I had the perfect diet for 4 days, on the fifth day, say for instance, I had a Sour Patch Kid, or even something even more benign, blueberries or a banana. Bananas are supposed to be kind of a basic fruit. They're not. The pH is probably, I think, around, I guess, 5 or 6. Um, it would kick it in. It would be like 2 weeks of clearing my throat and coughing. So frustrating.
you like couldn't even talk.
In that book, I read that esophageal cancer is actually the fastest growing cancer by like some alarming rate. They also basically, it's like you can't eat it. No tomato sauce, no fried foods, no fatty meats. The fatty meats usually are what get me now. Like I just eat lean meat anyway for the most part. Chocolate, I think coffee because it's so acidic. Basically anything that was acidic would activate the pepsin. But in the book, what I liked about it was she was just saying like all these acid reducers, H2 blockers, so on and so forth. I can never pronounce omeprazole or omeprazole, whatever they call that, the over-the-counter name for it. She was just saying like your body, and this is I think the case for most medications. it reduces the amount of acid produced, but then your body's actually compensating. And when you get off that drug, it produces even more. So then your acid reflux spikes higher than ever before because now your body's super producing everything to compensate for it. So she kind of talked about all that stuff. I really liked the book. It was just called the acid reflux diet. There's like dropping acid. She has like 4 or 5. I think she probably has even more recent ones. I don't really know. A lot of them are recipe books, but I really found that it was basically I was just eating miso soup and like honeydew melon for like the entire month. And after like 30 days or something, it's like my whole throat just reset. I was like, what the heck? It's like I never even had this.
You went from like constantly clearing your throat, coughing, like hardly
To nothing
like
at all.
literally not even able to get through a sentence to pretty much totally fine.
Diet, I think diet is like the biggest part of like being healthy. I really do. But it's also hard, like I said, like everything has chemicals. Everything has like something in it. But I have this theory. So, when you do the chemo treatment, when you eat food, it just tastes really bad. But I have this theory that, and I've kind of seen it be true. I mean, I can't say for sure because I just tested it on Chris and not like a group. But I noticed that the more he eats processed stuff, that shit tastes the worst. So I almost wonder if somehow he's tasting how things really taste. Like maybe it's stripped away some type of. I mean, I'm not a freaking scientist,
We're in the
maybe it's
matrix.
but maybe it's
really
stripped away
interesting.
something, like some type of taste bud, and he's actually tasting like the chemicals in it. Because a lot of times, if I just give him like just like, plain chicken or like peaches, he like loves peaches now. So I almost feel like maybe with that treatment, somehow he's tasting the chemicals, and then actual like real healthy food is like tasting good.
That's really interesting. I believe that there could be something to that.
Yeah, I told the radiation doctor, she said it could be true. But I mean, I've only seen it really happen with Chris. Like I'm not going to say it's true, but I think it's interesting, cuz I hear a lot of stories about people from other countries that like come here and eat our food and they're just like that's not a tomato, you know what I mean?
I'm
It's
dying to travel for that reason.
Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm always so curious about the people who are like, "Oh, I went to Italy for like 2 weeks on vacation and I could eat, all like the gluten and whatever, and I had no problem there. And then I come back here and I'm sick the second I eat something." Like, yeah, I'm like, man, really? Like, since I have so many issues with allergies, I'm like, oh, I'm dying to like go somewhere else where the food is different and just see like how it changes you.
There's a YouTube video. Robert F. Kennedy put it up, I think, actually.
I
Like,
was just about to mention him.
yeah, with the glyphosate on the wheat. And I don't know. I've never experienced. I've never farmed wheat before, but I think it's a broadleaf herbicide. Well, glyphosate's systemic; it kills everything. But I think they genetically modify the wheat to be able to not be affected by the glyphosate, which is the glyphosate's highly effective against plant cell walls. So I don't know how that would work. But like I said, I don't know too much about the details of that. But I think that was something that he was harping on, was just that the glyphosate stays on the leaves of the plant, or I guess the fruits, the blooms. So maybe that's what people are having allergic reactions to. I don't know what that would even do to the inside of your body. It's really only supposed to affect cell walls, and not necessarily human cells. So who knows? But I mean, it could be something that, like our farming practices, fertilizers, maybe we use.
Yeah, it's definitely an issue.
There's just a lot. I feel like it's just so complex that we couldn't even get to like the root of the issue. Because if you think about it, I mean, I don't even know if I could say 100 years ago. They probably started poisoning us 100 years ago already. But think back to when all we had was literally what we found in the woods. The ingredient would be blueberries. The ingredient would be chicken. I have not bought anything in forever that the ingredient is just what I'm getting. That's the problem. I don't want to see like chicken, sulfuric acid, freaking, what? Like it should just say chicken. That's my problem. I just want to get what I'm getting. I don't want to have a freaking science degree in order to understand like what I'm about to eat.
Yeah, I took a couple agricultural classes when I was in college. And it was enough to really realize what an issue this actually is, like the amount of genetic modification going on, the amount of heavy pesticide use of things that are only tested externally and not tested on what happens if they're ingested. And that's a very different level of safety. And even just India, I'm going to say, is like one of the best examples of how horrible this is. And if you look up like farmer suicides in India, there's a lot of farmers there who are their lives are getting ruined because of the influence of Monsanto taking over their farmland and using these genetically modified practices.
Yeah.
It's definitely a big issue that is honestly frightening. And so, yeah, hopefully with this, new administration, maybe RFK Jr. can crack down and make some progress with it.
If
I
he's
really
not
hope so.
if he's not assassinated first.
Yeah, that's
It's not even
what we
funny, I shouldn't laugh, but,
I know, but it's true.
I
But that,
haven't looked into this since 2020, but real quick, at least in 2020, I saw that, it's either way, it's a large number. It's either 240,000 acres or it's 420. So it's either 420 or 240. Either way, it's a lot. 100. So let's just say 240,000 acres of farmland is owned by Bill Gates. What the hell does he know about jack shit? Why is he getting farmland? I understand if he's getting like property, houses, but farmland. What are you doing, dude? And the thing is, I freaking hate Bill Gates so much. He didn't even invent Microsoft. It's from some dude named like Gary something. I forget his name. He stole it from his colleague. He becomes this huge big shot and he's a freaking computer nerd. Why is he promoting vaccines and buying
Right.
farmland?
It's sketchy.
why just if he's such a philanthropist, why does his wife divorce him
Right.
for $1 billion?
It's a mess, but like I don't know. It's there's so much to it and I mean even just the simple things like everything coming in plastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
What Marriott was saying isn't just in India, it's a large percentage of Africa too, a large percentage of Africa, and it's a huge detriment to local villages. And this isn't hearsay. I've met someone who grew up in one of these villages. He was an intern at one of the first companies I worked at, and he was saying it's not a joke. Like we were unable to grow because they just basically take up all the nutrients, and plants aren't going to fixate nutrients back in the soil. They exhaust them and they leave. And unless you have, excessive amounts of fertilizer, unless you use human feces, I guess, you're not going to be able to restore that soil that's done. Like soil only has a few growing seasons, but it's like 15 years of growing, and then it's just finished. Unless you put fertilizer, you're not growing anything in it.
Do you guys know Sadhguru?
Yeah,
Yeah.
He has a whole thing about like I think it's a charity organization or some organization and I think it might be called like Save the Dirt or something like that, but he talks about that a lot how the problem aside from the pesticides and all that is the soil like what you're saying. And I literally just came up with this and I know it wouldn't solve all the problems, but I feel like we should be using human bodies. Like why do we put human bodies in a casket and then into the soil? Why don't we just put the bodies into the dirt?
because that's too deep. So you
Oh,
bury some 6 feet underground, you're not going to be able to harvest the nutrients from that. You don't need the body when you have once again like a matrix sort of reference here. It produces all the energy you need, and that is actually something that's used and it's very effective. That biomass that they use as fertilizer. This is truthful. This is actually performed. So my background is in ecological restoration. This is a fertilizer that's very commonly used. It's what they use like animals manure. I mean, that's where the manure goes back into crops. Human waste is just effective at that. But yeah, he has saved the soil. So in terms of like increases amounts of flooding and if you're going to buy into sea level rise, which I can talk about for a little bit. I'm not going to though, I promise. The amount of soil that gets washed away, not to mention urban development, highways, this, that, the other thing. Whenever you have impervious surface, you increase the amount of sheet flow unless there's management practices in place. Even still goes to a basin, that's all, whatever. But soil is definitely one of those things that at this point it's not going to regenerate at the amount of time it would take for us to be able to it's a ticking time bomb, to be completely honest with you. It really, truly is. And you got to look at some of these countries where peat moss is one of the number one exports. And how long does it take to make peat moss? It's certainly it's
How long?
I don't know, Mary. I'm asking you, how long does it take to make a million years? But it's organic material that degrades over time and once they harvest it, so on and so forth. So the soil is a very serious matter.
Yes.
So then,
So
how do we combat that? Then just planting more trees, or I guess not. I don't know.
Crop
planting more trees.
rotation minimally.
Well,
Burns.
you mean in existing fields or increasing the amount of soil erosion is one of
Yeah,
the biggest.
losing topsoil is a huge
Yeah, losing
concern.
topsoil is a big deal. I mean, it takes years. So
Well, so that's where I'll
best
promote
management
the whole
practices.
small farming, not having these major, huge farms that are depleting the soil completely, at least with smaller farming practices. No, we can't sustain as much of the population with it, but there is more like crop rotation and less depletion of nutrients going on.
It'd be almost as effective as us using basically like bicycles to power our houses with electricity. It's just making it work.
It's not a solution, but it's at least a step in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if we
So
all had our own small garden, I think that'd be good.
Why does Bill Gates own the farmland? I mean, you just pretty much stated it right there. Because
then
we have a limited amount of food.
Factories.
And guess who has the food?
Yeah.
Bill Gates has the food.
Yeah.
And it's not just it's mostly China.
Yeah. I wish I could remember, because this type of stuff, like when I get too into it, I get obsessed and I like stress out and pull my hair out. So I wish I could remember off the top of my head, but I believe, and even if I don't have the number right, it's in the ballpark. I believe there's like 5 companies total in the country that produce like all our meat, or at least those are like the top 5. I mean, obviously there's still farmers who just, cut up their cow or whatever, but they're like, for instance, like Purdue, Tyson, those are the really bad ones. But there's basically only 5, and so all of our meat in the entire country like comes from these 5. And there's like tons of stories you can look over the years where like there's E. coli outbreaks in like 10 states because they're all eating the same meat. And like that itself is a problem. Like mass producing, like forget the vegetables, like these poor animals, first of all, are like tortured. Like it's just, oh, it's like so depressing. And then we're eating that like trauma and the chemicals and everything else. And it's just like, it's so freaking sad.
Yeah, I think that is really true of why like you can taste the difference when you eat local meat, like from, like your local butcher, or where the farm that it came from and how they take care of their animals versus a factory farm animal. Like you can taste the difference because what you're tasting is that trauma or lack thereof that changes your hormones and chemicals in your body. And like that's where like you are what you eat. How can you feel good if what you're eating is anxiety?
But then I also wonder, like, okay, so for instance, like, let's say this might be silly, but let's say you wanted to eat a squirrel from your yard, right? But then if that squirrel had been eating out of your trash can, like eating like the chemicals like from the food, that squirrel's not that healthy. So like, yeah, you're getting protein from the meat, but you're still eating processed food because the squirrel ate the processed food. So it's kind of a cycle like that too, because like if these chickens are eating like God knows whatever they're eating, that shit probably has chemicals in it. Then it's in the chicken, then they're pumping the chicken with more chemicals. So we're getting like secondhand chemicals and firsthand chemicals.
Yeah, bioaccumulation is a tricky thing. Depends on the chemicals that they consume. I mean, if the squirrel's sipping up stain off of an old paint can, I don't know if I would really want to touch them regardless.
That'd be kind of funny.
I wouldn't doubt it. It's funny when you think about this, like humans have to create everything in squares. If you fly, you fly over the Midwest, you just see squares and stuff like that. And the only thing you see windbreaks and hedgerows, right? Humans are such a straight line engineered species. It's like we're almost going to be needing to terraform another planet. It's people were jumping out of their seats to go to Mars. And it's funny, but I think that the only sustainable environment that we can really survive in for thousands, millions of years as where we are right now in technology, our developmental cycle is really on a terraformed planet, I feel. Like I actually think that's really the only way to do it. Unless we come up with some miraculous way of generating energy and controlling our population in a non-Bill Gates eugenics manner. That's I think it's we need to create our own environment. Like the creation aspect in our DNA is so strong. I think we need to create our own earth to live on.
I don't think you're wrong. Like, I think you're definitely, like, you're onto something. It scares me. Like, I don't feel comfortable with that, but like, I think you're onto something for sure. But I still have faith that like we can make a difference. But the problem is, I think most people are like, oh, well, I can't make a difference. So if we're all like, oh, well, let's just wait for fucking Bill Gates or, Kennedy to fix it. But it's like, ooh, we need to do something, people. But it's like, how do we even come together as a community when, I mean, my neighbors don't talk to each other. Like half the time I go out, I say hello to a person. They don't say hi back. I feel like, I don't know if it's 2020 or if it's the phones or if it's both, but I feel like we're all so crazy disconnected that it would literally take like God getting into every single one of us for us to work together and like really make a difference. So like I believe that we can fix the planet. But I just don't know.
I think what you're kind of harping on is self-sustainability and whatnot.
Yeah.
And the only really real way to do that is through like permaculture, which is essentially where you create your own wild, sustainable, trees, whatever works essentially to create a like a patchwork, non-homogenized farm in essence with
But then
crops.
even like I don't know, maybe you guys know more about this than me, but I've read that like seeds that are available to farmers, but especially to us, they're already also genetically modified in these like bad ways. Like I've heard stories about these farmers like not being able to use the seeds that they've used in their family forever. Like they have to use these new like I guess Bill Gates seeds or whatever. So then part of me is also like somebody's got to do something about the seeds because I can have my own garden here and we can all live together in harmony and give this person 5 tomatoes, this person 5 tomatoes. But if it has chemicals, and it's like we're still screwed anyways.
That is the big issue with the seeds. It's very hard to find clean seeds. And I think there are actually like there are Facebook communities of people actually like mailing each other their clean, good seeds so that we
But
can
then
still.
like is that like illegal though?
It's only
Not
legal.
illegal, but
The farmers don't own the seeds.
yeah.
They rent the seeds. Essentially from
And I guess you want to make sure you're collecting your seeds so you can keep
yeah,
your own supply, for the
but you're
next year.
leasing the seed. It's weird.
Oh, it's scary.
But
But
it is.
I do think that Robert Kennedy though is going to make a difference.
I hope so.
Like I
Yeah.
don't think he can undo everything, but I think he's going to help.
Yeah, anything would be better than this. So yeah, I am hopeful for that too.
I'm gonna be picking up a lot of Skittles in case they change the recipe. Selling
That's
them
so
on
funny.
eBay. Yeah, along with my incandescent light bulbs.
Yeah, exactly. The junk food will start to taste healthy and we'll all hate it.
Yeah.
But anyways, we talked about so much today. My God.
Great.
Hope I didn't bore you guys to death.
Oh, clever.
But anyways, I love you guys and thank you for being on today. Was there anything you wanted to close with?
I think we covered so much.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think we talked about
Yeah.
enough.
I know. It's great to connect with you like always.
Yeah, we hope that you guys are doing well. We
Yeah.
always think about you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We're hanging in there and I think it's going to be uphill from here. All right, but I love you guys and we'll talk soon, okay?
And talk soon.
Love you too.